Hey everyone, my name's Joe. I kind of want to just discuss this a little bit today about the NFPA codes. I know discussions can be done, print form, but a couple of these things we're going to talk about this semester I feel like are more important to actually talk about than to just put on paper or, quick chat GPT and throw it in. And NFPA code revisions are really one of those things. I'm going to be going back and forth in my notes, so don't mind that. Some of the things that we discussed in the lecture, like lithium-ion batteries and energy storage, are going to be a couple of the things that over the next 5 to 10 years are going to be everywhere, and we're going to be dealing with that. And of course, building construction is always changing, taller buildings, synthetic insulations, different fire loads. So NFPA codes and revisions are going to be changing with the times and with the buildings. Emerging energy systems, right? Renewable energy. And then societal changes, right? I know a big thing back in the 2010s when I lived in Seattle was cannabis extraction and using butane to get like the oil out of the cannabis and all that. And little garages and houses were being blown up because kids were doing it in their basement. And they thought it was like little meth labs at first in the suburbs, but it ended up being cannabis. It's really wild, but it's out here now, and we're seeing it left and right. Little tiny homes, right? People are building these tiny homes, huge fire loads in a small area. It's really changing the way we attack those. So there's NFPA revisions on codes all the time for everything. Unfortunately, the big NFPA code changes usually come when something bad happens. And I know in the discussion assignment, Professor Stack actually asked for maybe an example. And one example, of course, living in Massachusetts is the Worcester fire, right? The cold storage warehouse fire, and how that affected not only code changes around us, but how we look at big building fires like that, and not only big buildings, but abandoned buildings, and how we search for, how we do rescue searches for abandoned buildings or not abandoned buildings. It was a tragedy, right? It hit close to home. It's something that I don't know if they talk about at MFA, but it's talked about all across the country. And I've actually seen seminars in California actually do stuff on the Worcester fire. So it's good to know that the information is making its way across the country, even 20 years later, on how these guys died and what can be done differently to prevent it. The building itself was built in 1905, and it was a maze, right? It was a huge building, and it was built for cold storage and keep the cold in. So unfortunately, with this scenario, not only did it keep the cold in, but it kept the heat in, right? The smoke, the fire, the flame, it kept it all in on these guys. It was windowless, so when you talk about rescue, like what's our favorite thing other than a door, right? It's a window. So I can't even imagine what these guys thought going into this building, like. It was full of flammable insulation, right? Cork, foam, polyester. So all these things, huge fire, a lot of smoke, you can't see. They got lost and they perished, unfortunately, 6 of them. So the things that really changed from this, and they're right off the rip, no NFPA code was established or made as a direct result from this fire, but there were pushes and changes to the codes themselves, and we're going to learn about that here real quick. One of the big things was the abandoned building, right? So when Chief McNamee first got to the scene, it was reported, or the incident commander before Chief got there was reported that there were people squatting in there, and there were people living in there. So we're not going to let those people go, right? So obviously those guys go in, they search, they get lost. Guys go in to find them, they get lost. So a big thing in Massachusetts now is placards, right? We're Xing the buildings that we're not going into. These buildings are abandoned, stay out, exterior firefighting only. So that's a big thing, and we got to look out for it all the time. Don't just look on the building, right? These things can get pulled down from time to time, so look around. If the building looks empty, look on the ground. These things could be on a porch, they could be on a dumpster, it could be anywhere. Maybe someone, a contractor was looking at the house and pulled it down to get inside. So be very aware of those around the buildings in your areas. One thing that really surprised me about this, being 1999 and how much information has been out there since then is like the lack of unified command. And it wasn't that there was a lack of command, but nothing was really set up as far as certain roles, right? Safety officer roles or communication roles. And the two crews that were in there, Rescue 1, and Portable 5, they were stepping on each other all the whole time. They were trying to get maydays in. So, NFPA really pushed to get firehouses and units to designate channels for incident command, ops, mayday, and stuff like that. So that was a huge push after Worcester, not only in Massachusetts but across the country. RIT teams, right? So RIT's something that, if you go to a fire academy now, it's something that you learn, third week, fourth week, maybe, and it's something that when you get on scene, it's something that's established pretty quick if you have a lot of guys. I know in the South Shore it's understaffed. Some guys are showing up, two-man engine companies on scene right off the rip, so it's kind of hard to get that RIT team in place. But in a situation like this where you're rocking 5 alarms, the RIT team didn't even get put in place until the 5th alarm in 99. Crazy to think about, right? Since it's commonplace for us now to establish that RIT team and really get guys going, and you get that 45, 60-minute bottle, those RIT ropes and RIT rope. So 50 feet these guys in Worcester had. That was their max rope length, right? In a building that size, 50-foot ropes isn't going to get you very far, and we're not tethered. We didn't have tethered lines the way we have them now. So most of these guys are crawling over 200 feet, so you're off the line in 50. You're no window. It's tough, right? Everyone could play Captain Hindsight and say you shouldn't have been in there, shouldn't have done this and do this, but if your brothers are in there, what are you going to do? Obviously, you're going to go in, and I don't think anyone beside you would expect any different. So SCBA bottles were limited to 30 minutes. That's something that, if you're working in those conditions and you've worn an SCBA in the past, a 30-minute bottle, what's it going to last you, right? So I don't think these guys are getting 30 minutes out of those bottles in that scenario. Another crazy aspect of this, right, is a pass device, the chirp itself. So the building was so insulated and corridors cut off, and it's a squatter's paradise, so there were false walls and all these things put up in place. The chirp wasn't getting through, the pass device chirp. They were telling them to activate their pass, and they weren't hearing it through the walls and the doors and all that. So NIOSH figured that out, and they went to NFPA and a bunch of other people, and they said, this is something we should really look at. Like the beeps getting through, we can hear the beep, but maybe a different tone might get through the walls, and they figured that out. So the pass device you hear today has been changed over the years, but the push for the actual tone itself started back then in '99. And first two companies having thermals, right? So thermals weren't a huge thing back then. Maybe overhaul to look for hot spots, maybe search and rescue if it came down to it, but guys weren't first due with a tick. Now you see captains, lieutenants get off the engine, and it's one of the first things they do, where's his fire, and sort of things like that. So it's never not by our side now, but back then it wasn't. There's actually a company in Worcester, I believe, I haven't really looked into it, but I think they actually are developing technology to actually follow these guys in the buildings, which is really cool, since obviously it hit home to people there, and they're developing this technology. So yeah, that's about it. It's just shows you how terrible incidents can change coding and revisions to NFPA. Although we don't want to see these incidents happen, it is eye-opening. Yeah.